to the cloud. All right, it's probably going to ask you to. Um, awesome. Welcome to Q3 Georgia Tech authorized outreach trainer update, everybody. Welcome. If you want to either with like the little function that's, as part of Zoom, or you want to put into chat, give me like a thumbs up or a hand wave if this is your first outreach trainer webinar that you have attended with us. We have some, I'm sure I've got some newbies on here. Awesome. Hi, Josh. Welcome. Hi, Watha, Rachel, Corey. I'm seeing some thumbs up from folks. So excellent. Carl and Marina. All right. Fantastic. Marty Leak and I think I saw his name on here. Him and I both ran 500s and 501s last week and made sure to impress upon our participants that hopefully they would make time to attend, that even though they were in class and, hopefully getting the most up-to-date info, we want everybody to get in the practice of attending the quarterly outreach trainer webinars, just to stay in touch with us and opportunity to network with your folks. Hi, Gwen. Awesome. Because there is always new stuff that comes out. And if you only connect with us for your update class, your 502 or 503 every 4 years, you're missing a lot. So we want to make sure that hopefully we get you all in the habit of either joining in for these webinars, or watching the recordings and checking out the PowerPoints, after the fact, if this is a difficult time of day to join. So we'll hopefully, am I still sharing the right screen? My little green box went away. So you still see the opening. Thanks, Norm. Okay. All right. So we will get started. Let me think with just real quick reminders. I always put this right at the front for those of you, especially who are new, who we are, who is Georgia Tech OTIEC. If you were in, a 501, then maybe I had an opportunity to meet you recently. If you were in a 500 and I didn't get to pop in and say hi to the construction groups. Hello, I'm Hillary Warren, the director of the OSHA Training Institute Ed Center here at Georgia Tech. And we've got a great small but mighty team of folks that help administer this entire program, whether it's our OSHA classes, right? The ones that you took in order to become an authorized outreach trainer, and a whole host of other ones, or those are some of the ways that you would connect with us. We've got a whole lot of instructors as well, but the folks that help administer this program are I think most everyone's on the call. Most of you know Yvonne Jones, our amazing outreach program manager. Thanks, she's waving. Hi, Yvonne. Whitney Cannon is our newest addition to our team. We're so lucky and excited to have Whitney joining us. She, you would likely get emails from her after attending one of our classes these days that are chock full of a whole bunch of information, and she's helping administer your certificates, all that kind of stuff. Angenique, most of you know through all the years here as well, keeps this bus on the road. And Dana Atkinson, most of you know through maybe a 511 class that you took, or you've had him come and do an audit of your class. So this is our team, and welcome to have you. This is all of our personal contact info, but if you have a general question about outreach training, you need to change a password, you are having problems with in the portal, questions like that, this is the one you want to bookmark: training card requests at innovate.gatech.edu. Okay, remember, training card requests has an S on the end, and make sure you let us know when's a good time to get a hold of you. Yvonne is amazing and we'll call people back after hours. But let us know if that's the best time to reach you. Okay. So what are we talking about today? We have, amazingly, some of you faithfully attend all of these webinars, and in every one for the past 2 years, I've said, okay, They are. OSHA's working on them. OSHA's working on them. Some of you have gone through an entire cycle, right, of 4 years since 2019 when you attended your outreach trainer class or an update since then. And we've been working from the 2019 program requirements and procedures documents. Well, if you didn't get the message because you're not signed up for quick takes, or you didn't read our quarterly newsletter that we send out, or July 1, OSHA finally released the 2024 requirements and procedures document. So obviously that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. There's some other changes and updates that I just want to make sure y'all are aware of. We've got some reminders on record keeping and classes. And then in our April webinar, I did a Mentimeter poll to the group of people that were there. And it was, I don't know, there were maybe 50 or 60 people on that call. And I asked y'all what things you would like us to talk about during these webinars. How can we continue as your ATO to better support you? And one of the resounding things that came out was, I still need some help on like making my class. Like, where do I get materials from? And how do I build interactive activities? So my objective is to try to give like 2 different things each time we do a webinar so that you can just keep adding those to your back pocket and toolbox of trainer tips and tricks. So that's what we're going to do. There are a whole bunch of other like resource slides that you will be able to download from our website as part of this package, but I'm not going to go through them. Okay, so they're there for you to peruse in addition to what we cover today if you want more detail on certain things. Okay, so first up, sorry, go in the right direction there, mouse. July 1, the 2024 requirements and procedures documents were updated on OSHA's website. If you as an outreach trainer have not yet bookmarked for yourself the OSHA page where all of the outreach training stuff lives, please make sure that you do that, okay, today, first and foremost, and just plan to go there occasionally, right? So first step is OSHA.gov/training/outreach. That's the main page where all of outreach training stuff lives. And then if you come over to the column where it says for trainers, you'll see a star that I've put here next to program requirements, and then general industry and construction both have stars next to them because the procedures documents for both of those industries changed as well. So you can download those documents directly from OSHA's website. If you were in the 500 or 501 last week, you got all of those already. They're also on our webpage, our Georgia Tech webpage, which I'll show you later, but that's where you can always find this stuff. They are effective October 1st. So you all know OSHA typically gives us 90 days to come into compliance with any new rules that they put forth. So that's what's happening. We want to introduce you to them now, go through those changes, but starting October 1 is when you are required to be following them. Okay. And Angenique, thank you so much. She just dropped the link directly into the chat for you to help you bookmark. Okay. They look the same, y'all. The dates are different on the front of them, but they still have this same look. But they're a lot cleaner. Like, I think you're going to be really pleased. For those of you who have been outreach trainers for a while, when you open these up and you look at them, you're going to be like, oh, these are not quite so wordy, OSHA. Thanks. They're a little bit nicer to read and understand. And so again, reminders for you all that it is your obligation to read them, right? And read them again and follow the instructions that are in there. And one of the things that's in there is to make sure that you're giving advance notice of your training classes that you're planning on conducting. This is going to be really specific for those of you that are asking for exceptions for certain things, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the other reminder that I wanted to highlight, just because we've seen it kind of showing up on audits recently and people being blocked in the outreach portal, is that you're not reporting your classes that they were completed within the required 30 days time. So make sure that you remember, mark it on a calendar for yourself. If you end, your class on the 1st, then by the 30th, right, or 31st, you need to have that report completed in the portal so we can get students those cards. All righty. And the final reminder here is that if you don't pay in the portal for those cards, maybe you went and you put all the info in, but then you forgot to pay, you had to go and get the P card from someone else to put it in. Then that report's not going to be processed. It's just going to sit there in limbo. So make sure that you're following all the way through with all the steps. All right. So biggest changes. I tried to sort of narrow them, narrow down the highlights of what got altered in this 2024 version. So the first thing is with regards to exception requests. So there's the set of rules that we all operate under as outreach trainers, size of class, duration of class, that type of thing. If you need to change those parameters for some reason, okay, then that is called an exception request. And you don't just go ahead and do it. All right. You are requesting an exception first. That's the goal. Ask first. Sometimes you have to ask for forgiveness. I get it. But the goal is, if you're going to have to alter your plan, ask first. And the document is asking you to do that at least 7 days prior to the scheduled class. So in the old version, there was some stuff that was like almost like 90 days in advance. They kind of just decided to scrap all of the different timings and go with a flat, at least 7 days prior to your class, when something's going to have to run differently, put in a request. Okay. And they didn't change anything else around that. Still need a detailed narrative about your need. You're not going to say, well, it would cost us a lot less if we could run it, only in 1 day. All right. Like if we could do our 10-hour in 1 day instead of 2, management would buy in on that a lot better and pay, it would be cheaper. That's not going to get approved. Okay. That's part of what we're looking for in your exception request. So I see Josh's question and Carrie, your hand. So Josh, that is 7 calendar days. And Carrie.
Same question. So you've already answered it.
Okay. Calendar days. Yep. And you're going to submit those exception requests to, Yvonne and myself, and we review those. All right. The second thing that was updated that I just want to draw your attention to, because a lot of us are on platforms, professional networking platforms and things like that, with regards to the trainer code of conduct, all of the people that I have the pleasure of having in 501s, we pinky swear. Okay, y'all pinky swear that you're going to be good trainers and, on the up and up. I don't know what Philip or Marty do in the 500, but stomp their feet or shoot laser eyes at you or something, to remind you that we are going to be professional in our outreach training. And that means on breaks, and it means in our dealings, if people are paying us for classes, that type of thing. But what's listed specifically in the requirements document is, remember, right? We're not serving alcohol. You're not going to tell people how to get around the OSHA regs. You're not going to tell nasty jokes. All that kind of stuff remained the same. What is new is that when we are talking about discriminatory or defamatory remarks towards OSHA, your ATO, well, that would be Georgia Tech, right? Individuals, groups of individuals, that's not just verbally in your class. Okay. It's also in email, print media, social media, and your websites. So I just am going to throw that out there as a reminder, especially as we enter our upcoming election season, and we've got heightened everything all around. People getting a little loosey-goosey at the mouth on certain things. Let's just keep it let's keep it focused on what we're looking to do. Okay, so those are things that OSHA does pay attention to. So just letting you know. The next biggest change, third biggest change, is around video conferencing. Okay, So since 2019, and then we hit COVID, right? The process by which you would ask permission, right? An exception request had to be submitted for our review for you to do a 10-hour via Zoom or Teams or Google Classroom or whatever it is, anything that's in that virtual territory. And it was a lengthy and fraught process. And there were elements of it that I really like. And there are elements of it that were a real pain. Um, and so what is the same is that you still have to do any type of remote training on a computer live, like we're doing right now. Okay. You can't record yourself doing an hour-long introduction to OSHA and then post that and then let your people watch it. Okay, that's not the same as this type of live instructional virtual led. All right. But what they did change was make it a whole lot easier for you as outreach trainers and us as your ATO to conduct this. So what has to happen now is you do have to give a 7-day advance notice. So in the portal, you're going to go in and say, I'm going to conduct a class just like you normally would, except in the where part, you're going to say other, right? And it's going to be remote. And one of the obligations is that you are going to give a valid class website address, as people who have been asking for this exception have done for the past 3 years. People will send me their Teams link. They will send me their Zoom link. So that we can watch, we can observe, if we want to. So that has to be included. But you're not asking permission anymore. Advance notices, remember, they're not things we approve. These are just things, this is an obligation that you have to put it in by a certain time. So instead of you submitting a whole bunch of stuff to me, and waiting for my approval, now, if you want to conduct an online 10-hour, you just need to put that notification in at least 7 days ahead of time and address these items. They did put a class size limitation in place that didn't exist before. So now the requirement is that your class can't be more than 20 people online only. Okay. If you fell asleep there for the past 30 seconds and you heard me say that class size is now limited to 20, I'm talking only online. All right. Unless you've got a proctor or a facilitator that's going to be present the whole time to make sure people's cameras are on, because you can see the next part where it talks about hardware is that you have to conduct your class just the way we are conducting our online classes these days, our 510s or 502s, right? Camera's got to be on, audio's got to be on, people have to be participating, you have to know they're there. It can't just be a black box. Okay. If that's what your proctor's job is to ensure that people are participating. And so what I would suggest, this gold box down here at the bottom of this slide, are just my notes for you. That these were things that we had to talk about before when you had to apply in a different manner for permission to run an online class. These were the things that I was asking about, like, do you have any experience conducting online training? Because if you don't, let's figure out, how that's going to work for you. And you're going to feel good about it. And we're going to know how to do interactive activities, and we're going to know how to engage people and track to make sure they're participating and all that kind of stuff. Before we give you the okay on this, you don't have to give proof of that anymore. So this is my suggestion to you all, that you are going to want to make sure you feel good about it, and not just that you're getting pressured to run an online class because it's cheaper for your company, right? You feel good about your capabilities doing training online, and leading that, and maybe saying, okay, yeah, I can run an online class, but I'm only going to do it an hour a day. So this 10-hour is going to take 10 days to complete, right? Rather than having people sit in a Zoom class for 8 hours a day. Okay, there's just things to think about. And I would strongly encourage you to find some way to set forth class expectations and accountability around participation and use of staying on camera before you just go ahead and do it. We've had to put those things in place for our classes. We've had to actually get people to acknowledge, I promise I'm not going to drive my car while I take your class. Okay. Sitting in your car is one thing, driving your car while you're in the class is another, right? And you want to have some recourse for your students to be like, sorry, you're going to have to do some makeup, right? We're going to do something else because this is not going to work for you. That's a liability for y'all. So I would really encourage you put some class expectations and accountability that folks are agreeing to in terms of participating in that way before you continue. So I know we got a couple of questions. So Norman, right? Like, look at you. You're like, yes. Norm's one of my guys that has been doing online training for a while, and every time he wants to do one, he's submitting a request. And now you just follow this process here. Okay, we're good. So that's one. Any questions about this stuff here before we move on?
Hello,
Okay.
Hillary, I have a question.
Yeah.
My question is there a minimum number of students?
I'm not going to answer that question because I'm going to let other outreach trainers in this group. What's the minimum number of students, friends? Dennis, I see your fingers. John Poole, Brian Howell, I see your fingers. 3. Okay, your minimum has not changed. That still remains at 3 per class unless you're doing a makeup.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, thank you.
So unless you like, you had a class of 10 people and then you had 2 people who missed the second day and they need to do a makeup. Makeup training is in a different category than a regularly structured class. Good question. And good. I'm glad most of these folks could answer that one, that it's 3. That hasn't changed.
Just one follow-up, because the reason I'm asking is because I've had classes where there were like only 5 people signed up, and just concerned about if 2 or 3 of those people, for whatever reason, miss a day of training. Now I'm not requesting 3 cards. So I guess in that scenario, I could do a makeup training.
You could, if they were like, look, something just came up and I can't, that's different than doing sort of like a public offering and you only ended up with a couple of people. If you ended up with 2 people and they'd all already traveled there and paid, and that situation, that is an exception request.
Okay.
If it is, that you could probably just make up because someone got sick and someone else forgot, got pulled to go work on something, that one I would try to reschedule. It's better when you've got at least 3.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Yep, absolutely. All right. I do see comments coming in the chat. Look at those later. Gwen, do you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Next one, next change. Delivery of student cards. Okay. So the requirement to collect student contact information remains in place. And the way it's written is it's a student's home or business address. All right. And here's where it's cited. This comes up all the time in our records audits. We're always looking, did you guys collect contact info? You can collect an email, you can collect a phone number, and I would like you to, makes it a lot easier to communicate with your folks. But the wording in the document is address, business or home. Okay. What's new in the new requirements document is that they added this phrase that you can hand deliver your cards to your students. Okay. It previously was written that you had to mail. That was the word that was there. Whether y'all were doing it or not, that's what it said. You had to mail the card directly to the student at the address they provided. Now you can mail it. You can deliver it to the address on record, or you can hand deliver. to your students. So those of you who are training at your facilities and you see these people every day and you're like, I'm gonna just hand it to you, John, when I see you. Fantastic. Now you actually really can like do that. But you are encouraged to have some sort of sign off document that says, on this day, I received my card from John Poole, right? And here's my name and signature, right? So that you have something in your documentation that proves that you actually delivered that card to the student. All right. Carrie, question.
No, just a comment. And if you're gonna do the hand delivery, I would encourage you, use your same sign-in roster, use a new one. Have them sign that they received it, and you can upload that back to the outreach portal. And that way you don't have to worry about where you put it. So just add it to your documentation from the original class. And then you have a one-stop shop for everything. That works perfectly. Now that they've added this new.
Beautiful idea. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing
Sorry for
that,
interrupting.
everyone. Great. I much appreciate that, right? They don't give us any example. I do have one. There was a trainer that gave me one that they did, and we're going to talk about getting some additional resources up to our website so that you guys can pull those down. But I like that idea perfectly as an additional like final, sign off. Yep, received, done. Other changes in the
Hillary?
documents. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Norm.
I got a question on the last slide for you.
Yep.
You note that they encourage us to get the trackable delivery method. One thing I started doing was sending out to my students a email asking them to register receipt of their cards. And I'm using that to track the card delivery. Is that good to go?
Yeah, I mean, whatever method you want to use that gets you the answer back is really helpful. And I think that part of this, we all know that these cards don't expire, right? Their outreach cards don't expire, but they can only be replaced one time within the first 5 years of being issued. And we've had a lot of trainers, I feel like kind of recently, Yvonne might agree that they don't work for their company anymore, right? Like they're somewhere else. And then they get contacted by a student, as is allowed, for a replacement card that was originally paid for by the company. And they're now saying, well, I don't have my card. I need a replacement. It's $25 to replace a card. And so who's gonna gather that expense, right? That's not something that we're supposed to be involved in. We'll help you get a replacement, but we don't have, $25 for every student card that gets lost. So that is something that, again, when we're setting expectations for our class or for our clients or for our companies, that the request comes to you, the trainer, to sort of put that into the system, but knowing who's going to pay for that replacement card, that's something that you probably want to be working out up front. Anything you want to add on that, Yvonne? Okay. Any other questions, folks? All right, good stuff. They changed the language around training language. Okay. So around interpretation, this is just something to note for some of you. If you were teaching, what the goal is still to be teaching in a language that people understand. Okay. And using vocabulary and terminology that your folks understand, and teaching at a grade level that your folks understand. And you were allowed to use interpreters. But the rule was, if you were using an interpreter in class, right, you were teaching in English and then your interpreter translated your past 3 sentences into Spanish or Romanian or whatever it is, that you were going to double the time of your class. The new language in this document is that if you are carrying on in that same manner, non-simultaneous interpretation, which means I talk, then my interpreter talks. I talk, then my interpreter talks. Then it's still at least double the time. If you have simultaneous interpretation, all right, then what they've now said is that you have to ensure a sufficient amount of time. And that it's a dedicated interpreter who still has safety and health qualifications, just like in the old version, that is going to conduct that interpretation in a non-disruptive manner for everybody else in the class. So I'm thinking what that looks like might be sign language. I'm thinking that might look like the UN, where they have an earpiece in for all of the delegates, and they sit there, and some unit is actually doing simultaneous interpretation, and that interpretation is only going into the listener's ear, and therefore it's not disruptive to anybody else. I am waiting on additional clarification for what this really means, but at the moment, that is my interpretation of interpretation.
Hillary, what about the Microsoft subtitles now that they do automatically?
So
They're
it's
not
a
real
great
accurate all the
question.
time.
And I asked, that's really what I asked for clarification on, Brian. And someone else put in, right, can you use AI voice conversion? Because the requirement is still that this person has, or interpretation device is translating correctly. And by correctly, I mean like it understands the safety and health terminology or acronyms or intent of what it is that you're sharing. So I know that it can do subtitles, and I know that there's AI voice conversion, and that like you can do Google Translate on your phone. I'm not convinced, based on what I've seen, that it always gets it right. Right? I don't know how many of you, like what you've used, and seen in action. Sometimes it works well, and sometimes it botches it up pretty darn bad. So, this is where you need to be real judicious in what it is that you're utilizing.
I know
I
that I've
know
tried to
that's
do
not
it
a
the
yes
other
or
way
no
around.
answer.
I've tried to do it the other way, backwards from Spanish to me, so I can, when they're speaking Spanish, so I could read the English. And because of all the dialects of Spanish, it was horrible. Sometimes it was hysterically funny what it was telling me they were saying. I know it wasn't what they were saying about their grandpa, and
Right.
stuff. So I know that there are some issues with it still, especially with all the dialects in like Spanish.
Correct. So if I'd have gotten to put my 2 cents in before they published this, right? These are the questions I would have been asking, because I'm asking them myself, right, as an outreach trainer, and we know what our experiences are. So it is, again, just coming back to remembering, I think that the OSHA, whatever they put out, is the minimum, and your objective as a good ethical outreach trainer is to be teaching in a way that your students understand. And yes, while the like Microsoft stuff can do subtitles in another language, are people literate? Right? Like just be real careful about what we're trying to accomplish here. And stand by. There will hopefully be some more information that I can share with you at our next webinar. All right. Last big update was with regards to training less than 3 people in the class. So, Mr. Jackson, right? Like you were asking, like, is there a minimum? And the minimum, right, is that 3 number. In the old version, they had a statement that would allow companies to write in an exception request that then could be good for a whole year, where if part of your onboarding process for a new employee was to get them a 10-hour before they're actually out on the floor or on the job site, hiring, you might have a couple people a month, but it's your company policy that they get that 10-hour before they go and start work. So what are you supposed to do, right? That's where you could have written in for this routine business exemption. It's our like routine business practice that we might have to train people, and therefore we would have to do less than 3 people. And we could kind of give you a blanket approval. That language is not in this new document. It's just not there. So what I would say is that there is no routine business practice exemption. And anytime you're going to want to train less than 3 people, you just need to put in an exception request. Okay. So those are the biggest changes, y'all. Any other questions? Everyone is going to nod their heads in agreement and give me a thumbs up that you are going to read the new requirements document and procedures document for your industry. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate you coming on camera just to shake your head. Yes, Tim. All right, thumbs up. Everyone is promising to read them. Beautiful. I might have missed something. Okay, so I'm doing my best.
I have one question, Hilaire.
Yes, go
Um,
ahead, Peter.
I think I called in or sent in an email. In regards to training online, a company made a request for me to do online training, but they're in New York.
Oh,
And they-
okay. Yes. There are no regional boundaries for conducting training for you as an authorized outreach instructor beyond what's in the document about geographical boundaries for OSHA, right? Like you can't conduct Zoom training for people in Abu Dhabi who do not fall under OSHA. Okay, that requirement still stands. But if you're training people who are covered by OSHA, New York, they are, right? They're within OSHA's geographical boundary. Then it doesn't matter if you're in Georgia or Alabama or Tennessee and you want to Zoom train your people in New York. That's okay. That's what people are doing a lot more of these days. Does that answer your question?
It does. So that brings up the second question is,
Okay.
what do we charge? Because they have online people that charging $59 and it's like I'm trying to compete, but I want to also be realistic because $59 is not a realistic charge.
I am going to let folks that are on this call who do because the OTIECs we're not gonna give you a price boundary, right? The only thing we are gonna say anything about is the price of your card, right? Your student cards that you issue, which is $10. In terms of what you want to charge, I had this conversation with some folks in the 501 last week. I know they could provide some feedback. Willard, I'm looking at you into the chat if you remember some of the things that the numbers that got thrown around for a 10-hour, for example. And you're right. It's hard for us as live body outreach trainers to price ourselves where it makes sense when we're up against these authorized online providers, the few, that are charging $59 a pop. So it's really selling, what are you getting out of this student or company when you're actually interacting with somebody who has experience and your students can network with each other and we can dialogue in a way that really supports active learning rather than just clicking through systems, right?
Right.
So while I carry on to keep us on time, I invite anyone who has feedback for Peter about pricing to pop that into the chat. All right.
All right.
Good question. So other OSHA updates, just kind of real quickly. I am not going to go through these in detail. These are just sort of reminders, more so for you as safety and health professionals than necessarily outreach trainers, but some of these things will be important for you potentially in terms of updating your materials in the near future. Okay. OSHA recently released, it's now summer, but they released their spring 2024 regulatory agenda. And just the reminder that when they release that's their way to inform the public, everybody, that they have got some new priorities in place, or reinforcing priorities around safety and health. And those are always broken into 3 categories: pre-rule, proposed rule, and final rule. Okay. So the things that became effective final rules, I put the dates here. So again, if you didn't recently take a 502 or 503 update, and you haven't really been paying too much attention, these would be ones that we would want to look into. because in January, there was some changes made around 300 logs and improving tracking and who's got a report, that became effective in January. There became a worker walk around designation during an OSHA inspection, that it doesn't have to be someone who is an employee at the company to be the representative during the walk around. Okay, that became effective at the end of May. HAZCOM has been updated again to come in line with GHS 7. They're now on version 9, actually, but we are just trying to catch up here in the US to get in compliant with version 7. So that became effective just a couple of weeks ago. So there's some changes to HAZCOM around labeling that you might want to update your 1 hour HAZCOM mandatory topic. All right. They are expected to have their final rule for PPE in construction next month. There's some updates for forklifts that is expected in August. And then there's some related to whistleblower and really specifically retaliation and sort of anti-money laundering related stuff. All that's expected in January. They're expected to continue moving forward, taking what was the ETS for COVID and healthcare specifically, and getting that into something more finalized that's useful for healthcare. That's expected by December. And then this use of subpoenas, that is expected to be final rule by November. So these are just things that have changed or that are anticipated to change in the next several months. That's the final rule. All right, proposed rules that are coming down the pike. I tried to sort of break into categories for you, and there's lots of information about each of these, but I'm not going to go into detail on them. I can help you find the info if that would be useful, but there's some health related rules, ones around workplace violence, infectious disease, emergency response, that there's not good enough standard around protecting emergency responders, first responders. So working on a proposed rule for emergency response. They're analyzing comments in September. There's a new fit testing protocol that they're looking at and wanting to move that forward. They're looking at adding medical removal for silica exposure to the silica standard. That's expected in October. So these are, and then obviously the heat illness prevention one did come out in July, that proposed rule, and it's in its comment period right now. So that would be one that I think it'd be really important to review. And then if you want to submit comments, we can talk a little bit more about that offline. Construction related standards that are in proposed rule, changing, coming forward, amendments to the cranes and derricks, that's expected by February. Welding in construction confined spaces is expected in February. And then stuff around communication towers and the hazards for erection and then servicing and maintenance of communication towers is also expected in February. And then for general industry, looking at, they're analyzing comments for process safety management in September. Walking working surfaces, they got some feedback after they made revisions to that subpart in 2016. And there were a couple of errors that came out when they had made those revisions. So they're now looking at revising those errors and doing a couple of other things. There's some changes for lockout, tagout, and tree care specifically because it's such a high hazard industry. So those are all proposed rules coming down the pike and their general timeframes. And then the things that are in pre-rule stage is lowering the blood lead level for medical removal. And then these ones here, this lower set of bullets are long-term actions. So there's not like anything like happening right now, but it is, these are ones that they're looking at, and we might see advancement on at some point regarding mechanical power presses because it's way outdated. And looking at specific I think it's operation and maintenance of forklifts, and revising table 1 for construction silica standards. So those are some of the things that, again, are coming down the pike. So that's pre-rule and long-term actions. Other updates, what do we got? Oh, let me put those up here. These are leftover from our April webinar, but I wanted to keep them in here in case you didn't attend in April, just that they would be a resource for you. I kept the ones, I added in the NEPs, which, right, national emphasis programs and regional emphasis programs that had any kind of revision, or they were new since 2020, because again, we're in 2024. So I'm assuming that some of you, maybe the last time you really got some OSHA related update info, was during your last trainer class or update class, which would have been in 2020. So these are things that have been altered in the past 4 years. We have on our website the most frequently cited standards for the past year. Those typically come out in October, November. And so you can pull those down off of program materials if you want to use them in your training materials. And just reminders on where we're at with penalty structure. That changes every year. I'm still seeing in our audits that y'all have not updated your introduction to OSHA modules. So remember, in January of 2024, they added an additional required handout. So if you have not added the workplace mental health fact sheet to your introduction to OSHA module, that changed in January. So make sure that you look at the new instructor guide and add that additional required handout. Okay. You asked a little bit for portals. These are just going to be a couple quick reminders on how that process works, right? So you log into the outreach portal, you go to actions, you pick add upcoming training. Add upcoming training is where you will put in your advance notice. If you want to make sure that it actually went in, okay, because you're going to submit it and then you're going to be like, all right, did it go? Did it work? You don't have to call us and ask us if it worked. You can go back to the actions tab and go to view submitted reports. All right. And what you will see is a list of reports that are for classes you maybe conducted in the past, and they're way in the past and they're paid for and done. But what you would be looking for is one that says, no, it's not approved. And that's because it's not a course report yet. It's just I'm doing this training in the future, right? Advance notice. So you can always look at your view submitted reports to see what actually is in the system. Once you're done with your class, right, you've completed it and you're ready to tell us who your students were and get your cards, then again, you come back to view submitted reports and then find that report in the list, and you can click it and edit it and report your names and the topics and all that kind of stuff. We have some quick tip sheets with instructions and screenshots that hopefully, Angenique, you can pull those and drop them as files into the chat here for these folks. We try to include them in emails that we send out for everybody, but what I just walked through, we have some quick tip documents that you can utilize too. All right, I'd see chats. I'm going to make sure that I address those, but I want to get through just a couple of other things. I do want you to get familiar with that. If something happens, like you miss that 30-day window, and don't go back and falsify your records, right? Like, don't go back and erase your dates and be like, oh, I'll just make it be the 29 days over and not 31. It's going to pop open a box that just says, give us your reason for being late. And then you will hit submit, and then we will review it, and then you can proceed. Okay. So those are just examples. Again, things happen. We do forget, we get sick, we get busy. It doesn't make or break you as an outreach trainer. All right. But just spell out what it was that went wrong, and we'll work with you, because the goal is always going to be to get the cards to your students who are deserving of them, right? Whether it's 40 days late or 60 days late, doesn't matter. The goal is to get the cards to your students. All right. Let's see. reminder, you can upload, Carrie already brought it up, that you can upload documents directly into the portal, okay? Just like you applied for your 500 or your 503 or whatever, and we said, upload documents. It's the same thing here. You can upload documents, and we want you to do so. Get into the habit of adding your agenda and your sign-in sheets and your student contact info and all that, right? I will not accept my dog ate the report, right, Norman? Okay, so add it here because it makes card replacement so much easier. It makes audits so much easier. It makes verifying certain things so much easier. This is like a really nice backup for you. So upload your stuff, all right? Really, really easy to do. The other thing that we keep seeing in audits is that we will request people provide the OTPR, the Outreach Training Program Report. That is not the same as this thing over here, which is the portal report. You know it's the portal report because it's got the portal icon on it. If it's an OTPR report, it's got the DOL logo on it. And the only way that you generate that OTPR is to click the blue button that shows up in the portal that says OSHA format PDF. My dog is trying to escape. OSHA format PDF is the euphemism for OTPR. All right. So it lives in the portal, but if you're asked to produce it, you have to click that button, download it, and then you've got it. All right. I'm going to have to let him out. Y'all give me one second. I want to scoot to a couple of other things. You be quiet. Come on, out of this room. Sorry, he's not going to stop unless he was out. Released. We talked about that already. You guys can review these. I would just say I'm seeing this in various conversations. And I want to put it out in front of y'all like ahead of time, because I think it does impact your record keeping. And it stresses you out as trainers, and then therefore it stresses us out. Everything that you need to know to make the case to management, that outreach training and all of the rules that go around it, it is in these requirements documents. So I want you to know where to be able to put your fingers in the document, to be able to say to someone who's telling you as a client or a manager, come on, man, can't you just do this class like in one day? Or, no, I know, like you only missed 1 hour. Can't he, like, just, and he knows this stuff. He's had HASCOM training a million times, right? Like, can't you just sign off on it? I want you to know where to go. And again, it's in the requirements document and the procedures document. This is what you're held to. This is what you're obligated to. This is what you sign the statement of compliance for. This is the box that you check for statement of certification that says, I did do this the way I was supposed to do it. Okay. And make sure that you don't get pushed by somebody to do something that is against the rules. All right. It is 100% attendance. There is a specific makeup process. There is a reason why you have to collect student contact info. There is a reason why those cards come to you, and then you have to distribute them to your students. If you can't give them to some intermediary, like all of those things are in that document and are there to protect you. So just know if you are not clear on where some of those things are and you want more guidance on that, we're happy to help. But I want you to know these are the things that I think trainers have gotten pushed on and have had to feel like they're between a rock and a hard place. I get it. And make accommodations or make a judgment call. You can't do that. Okay. You have to adhere to the rules as they are. All right. So the last thing is that in April, the folks that were on that call asked for, how do I like make more activities? So I want to do that, at least show you where those resources are going to be so that you can download this whole presentation for yourself. We get a lot of questions about hey, I got nothing. Where do I start? Like in terms of just basic presentations. And remember, we show you in class, OSHA's got some, and they're all right. They're chock full of content. They are not ready to go for a 10-hour. Okay. Like don't take those decks and then be like, all right, I'm gonna just cover excavations now, right? Most of them are like 80 slides long. They are full of text. There's that, you know, you gotta have some real literate people in order to be using those. So our suggestion is you can use them as a starting point, review your learning objectives, think about what is the content that I want to cover, and then cull those down if you're really starting from scratch. And again, reminder, these are where you can find those PowerPoints for both general industry and construction on OSHA's webpage. Okay. But better, I think better, some of these are under the training resources tab on the OSHA page and under the Susan Harwood grant materials that were developed. And so OSHA's got a training library. They've got all these different reference materials. All of these would be things that, again, if you're just getting started, I would be honing in on some of those particular links first to search for yourself. But when it comes to activities, not just content, but then how do I build this class into something interactive? Some of the things that are out there, one of them would be Safe and Sound Week is coming up, right? In a couple of weeks in August. And on their main page for Safe and Sound, they have a whole list of activities. Each of these expands open, and some of them I think would be really great for implementation in a 10 or 30 hour. So these are already sort of built out and tell you what to look for and how you can engage. Okay. So that's suggestion number 1. Case studies are a really good thing to do in your classes, right? Small groups, getting people working through real world relevant examples. And they have a whole bunch of case studies that are already developed that you can work through as your group. And I think those are really good for 30 hours. The Come Home Safe videos that OSHA has developed, they're like 3 or 4 minutes long. Get out your tissues, y'all. And these are really good for setting the stage. I had a list. Each of them is obviously telling the story of a fatality, but they are like, one is because of a caught in, one is because of a electrical, one is because, so they're in different topic areas. So if you're needing a way to sort of set the stage for, hey, we're going to talk about this topic and this is why it's important. These are the families that are left behind. These are really, really useful videos. Okay. We made in the past 2 years, a coaching series, tip sheets on a variety of topics. And one of the ones that we developed was around class activities and ideas and how to do that and how to put it together. So things like scavenger hunts through your CFR or through a video, and acting things out, or going to Reddit / subreddit OSHA, right? And looking at all the ridiculous photos that people upload of safety things gone awry, but actually using those as a tool. I mean, people laugh at them. I laugh at them, right? We laugh at them, but you could turn that into a learning experience, right? And have people actually identify what regulation was violated here. How much would that be in an actual OSHA citation, right? Like, give your supervisors and management folks something to do, and have them go through an activity like that. 2 examples. Told you I'd give you a couple. And Norm, I'm so proud of you. You were throwing so much stuff in there. I appreciate it. You've worked so hard on this. Hazard mapping is one that we normally talk about like in the 501, but this is an active, getting people, give them a time frame, give them some markers, get them into small groups and tell them to draw a floor plan of your job site, their house, doesn't matter. And then color code where they might find certain hazards. Is it a slip trip? Is it hot in the kitchen? Is there a fall hazard? Is there, you know, an area where we constantly have oil spills, that's all red safety. You can have chemical hazards be highlighted in green. You can have you know, health hazard stuff in orange. You can have ergonomic stuff in blue. These are really helpful to get people, especially if they're coming from different departments or crews, to be able to think outside the box. You know, they're used to the hazards they see, but now they're working in a team with people who are coming with different eyes. Hazard mapping can be great as like a jumping off place for your 10-hour, but you can also take that activity further and again, involve the standards and that sort of thing in a 30-hour. Someone have a comment here they wanted to share? Okay, the other activity that I wanted to leave you with was the FACE reports that NIOSH publishes. And the next slide is a screenshot of the different categories of where, again, you would pick a topic. So maybe we want to talk about falls, or you want to talk about machine guarding or whatever. Each of these is related to a fatality. And there's multiples, sadly, right, under each of these links. And you can read the front scenario. There's typically photos. And what I will typically give to students is just like 3 or 4 basic facts from that report, right? There was a maintenance supervisor. He fell off this ladder into this tank of hot water and he died. Basic investigation found that there wasn't a cover on the top of it. And the ladder was next to the tank. And he leaned over to get to reaching the conduit, you know, that was sort of over the tank. What I then charge classes with is, okay, if you gave them those basic facts, get them to pretend to be the investigator, right? Or the supervisor, and figure out what kind of questions would you ask in order to understand what went wrong here, right? Why wasn't the grate on there? Was there a grate in the first place? What time of day was it? Why was the supervisor performing this work and not, you know, just some other, the guy that's, you know, the newbie guy? Was anybody standing there holding the ladder at the bottom, right? Like there's a whole bunch of questions that you probably have, but that some folks in your classes, that might be sort of a new exercise for them to really think that through. And again, then you can expand into a 30-hour of, okay, find the citations for this. What steps would we need to cover in retraining? You know, where were we really deficient? What could we do differently next time? So those are a couple of things to think about from an engagement perspective. And the last thing I would encourage you to do is you can absolutely use videos. Remember, you can use videos for training for 25% of your time, but make your students work for it. Know what it is you're wanting them to get out of it. Whether you're pausing the video at certain intervals and asking questions, whether you're giving them a list of things that they need to find and write down answers to as they watch the video, like whatever it is, don't just put it on and press play and then be surprised when everyone goes to sleep in the first 15 minutes, right? So those are just, I told you I would give you a couple of suggested activities and things to think about. We'll keep doing that as a practice. Just reminder, double check your date for when you expire. If you don't remember, it's going to be on your card or it's going to be in the portal. These are our planned upcoming 502 and 503s. Do not miss that window. You do not want to start over, right? So make sure you're signed up to take your 502 or 503. Yes, you may be in class while you expire, right? So if class starts on Monday and you expire on Tuesday, it's fine. All right. But don't expire and then ask to get back in without having to start all over. It's what has to happen. Sorry. Any questions on that one? Yes, you know, hi, Hiawatha. Okay. There's one in every 500 and 501 these days.
Thanks, Hillary.
Okay, good. You know, our next webinar is going to be in November. you can register just the same way you did for this one. Grab the link off of the website, or you can grab it from here. Maybe someone can drop it into the chat. Yes, Dr. Toomer, there are going to be, I ran out of room and I got a year up here. So know that when we plan our calendar, we're always looking at when expirations are going to be. So we will, you know, have additional dates. I just didn't put them up here. All right. The rest, there are slides with resources after this, but I'm going to go and take a peek at our chat. I know we're over time, so if you've got to jump, I understand, but I'm going to just quickly look at things that maybe didn't get addressed. If you, okay, reminder, your card, your trainer card and your course completion certificate come separately from each other. So you might have received a card first and then you'll receive your certificate, or other way around. Just give like 3 weeks. And if you have not received both of those items within a 3-week period, reach out to us, because you should have both of them in hand by then. All right, so that's one question. I know, Norm, you put excellent stuff in for resources. We've got 50% rule attendance, missed partial. Oh, right. Okay. So if you have a 10-hour class, for example, and you have 5 hours planned on day 1 and 5 hours planned of contact time, right, on day 2, and you have someone who attends on day 1 and they complete all 5 hours, but then they got sick and they couldn't attend on day 2, they are eligible for makeup training, which means without having to start over. So it just means you have to pick a different date with that person and complete the 50% that they missed, right? Or maybe it's 1 hour that they missed and you can do makeup. But if they only came to class for 2 hours and then dropped off the face of the earth, and then came back to you like, you know, 4 months later or whatever, and were like, hey, I need to finish my training with you, you can be like, no, you can start over. All right. They are not eligible to get into makeup training. Does that make sense? I
Hillary?
hope that answers that question. Yes, Yvonne?
Yes, I was hoping you would share that if a student has to come in and do a makeup training, that student has to be on a separate course report from the class that they originally started with. The reason being is they didn't end or they didn't complete their training with that class. So if that student has to come in and do additional training to make up what they have missed, you have to put that student on a course report by themselves, because they have a different end date from the other students. Did I confuse you?
No. And thank
Oh,
you for
great.
that re-clarification. It's really important, y'all. Okay. Like if you are doing makeup training, they have to go on their own report, because they are going to have a different end date. Remember, your student cards have a date that's printed on them, and that is going to be your last day of class, right? Like when you finished. And if they're going to be something different than that, then they get a different report and a different date on their card. All right.
So I got a quick-
Good question.
A quick question for that to you, Hillary or Yvonne, in reference to that. So even though we know they got to be on a different report, as far as the training material, the outline, and all that information, we can still use that same exact information that we used on the original class in the example that you gave. We just have to do a different report.
Right, like you're going to include everything together when you submit. So say you have one person who's going to do makeup, you would include, okay, they started on this date, just like everybody else, and here's the sign-in sheet and the topics that were covered and all of that. And then I made it up with them, you know, on later, and here was the end date, and here were the topics that we covered, and here's where they signed off. And now that's all together in one. Does that answer that, Gary? You were right. It's okay, beautiful.
One more thing,
Anybody
Hillary?
else? Yes, ma'am.
One more thing. For just to keep in mind, when you have a student that is going to be addressing makeup training, upload the sign-in sheets. The sign-in sheet from the day 1 that they attended the class, or where they signed in for that class, and then upload the sign-in sheets for their makeup time. Okay, and it just makes it easier. Again, the information is there. We can review it, we can verify attendance, and we can move forward with processing the request. Also, keep in mind that if you are submitting for a student that has had to go and make up, it's gonna be an exception. It's probably only gonna be one student, 2 or less. And that's gonna come to me as an exception. I have to approve that before you can actually submit the completed course report. Understood?
There's a little bit of a, like, it's not an instantaneous thing, right? Because there is a real live body, Miss Yvonne, looking at that exception request that comes in, and she has to approve it, and then you can proceed. So it's not like you just type it in and then you can go on. It's gotta clear that hurdle, and then you can go back and complete the rest of it. Okay. Good. I know we're over time, so I appreciate everyone's patience. You know me, there's always a crap ton of stuff I want to talk to you all about. Hi, Mike Gutierrez. How are you? I'm like looking at faces I haven't gotten to see yet. So it's good to see you all. We will meet again in November. Come back, join us again. And like I said, there's a whole bunch of resources that are in additional slides at the end of this. Once we get these uploaded to the website, which will probably be tomorrow, you can download it and have it available for your reference. Thanks, everybody. And glad to have you as trainers, as always, and appreciate your time. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Hillary.
So, welcome.
Good job.
Thank you, Hillary.
Enjoyed it, Hillary.
Good to see you all. Thanks, friends.
See you next month.
Again, appreciate it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
sounds good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Hillary.
Bye.
Bye.
Peter, I'm gonna call you.
All right, thanks. All right,
Okay.
bye, Hillary.